Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast.
During elections, Canadians play and cheer for different teams. Now that election is over, and we are in a once-in-a-lifetime crisis. It's time together, it's time to come together, to put on our Team Canada sweaters and win big.
Prime Minister Mark Carney just held his first media conference since winning the election, outlining his government's priorities and how that government will tackle negotiations with Donald Trump, starting with their first face-to-face meeting on Tuesday. In just a few short weeks, the House of Commons returns with a minority Liberal government, a hefty Conservative opposition, and a lot of challenges facing this nation. Rob Russo is the Canadian correspondent for The Economist. Rob, good morning.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Glad to have you here. There was a bit of news in what the Prime Minister said, partially, that the King will be delivering the speech from the throne at the end of this month. But beyond that, what did you make of what you heard from Mark Carney?
I actually thought it was a news-a-palooza myself, Matt. Look, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to lace up our runners. He is hitting the ground running. First, by confirming that he's going to the White House next Tuesday. Now, he said, do not expect white puffs of smoke. In other words, there will be no breakthrough agreement. What that meeting, though, will establish, a very important thing that it will establish, is what kind of relationship we will have at the summit level between Canada and the United States. Everybody knows that the president would like to see Canada cease to exist as it exists now. So the ground rules are going to have to be established. I'm sure they're going to establish whether or not they advance the date of a new North American Free Trade Pact. I'm sure one of the conditions Mr. Carney is going to lay down, if that discussion is going to be advanced, because it's not due to happen until next year, is the immediate removal of tariffs that are being applied now. So a huge meeting right there. He has also said that he needs to discuss issues with the premiers. In 8 weeks, he wants to remove all internal trade barriers between now and July 1st. That's a huge goal in and of itself. He's doing it not with a rickety minority. He was asked whether or not he needs a formal pact with the NDP. I thought the question was strange because there is no NDP leader with which to conclude that pact. But the strength of his minority is that no one party holds the balance of power. He can negotiate with the party leaders on an issue-by-issue basis. He said he's already had very good talks with Mr. Poilievre, including on the fact that he would call an instant by-election.
No games, he said.
Yeah, an instant by-election if Mr. Poilievre can convince somebody to give up their seat. We know those discussions are happening now between Mr. Poilievre and some prospective people who've got their fingers on the ejection button. So it's really going to be a sprint between now and I would say even the summer doesn't promise much of a break for those of us who cover politics on Parliament Hill.
Just a minute or so left. One of the things he said was, I'm in politics to do big things, not to be something. What do you take from that?
Oh, this is a man who didn't have to come into politics. Now, I don't think that he is without ambition. He clearly has ambition, but he has a fortune compared to all of us in the real world. He doesn't need the dough, doesn't need the glory as such, but he has a plan. I've known him for a long time, and this is a man who has a full policy book beyond what's in the Liberal platform. He's 60 years old. He doesn't want to tarry.
And he can do that with a minority government?
He should be able to have a clear flight path for at least a year, I would say. Mr. Blanchet has said no games for a year. The Conservatives are still not done self-reflection. That is going to take some time, even with Mr. Poilievre coming in a hurry. I think his tormentors in Parliament will be tamed for quite some time. And given the historic nature of the challenge from Trump, I think all of them are promising to put Canada first. Now, we'll see how long that lasts. This is politics. It's not tiddlywinks. We should expect some pretty good back and forth. But I think he's got some clear runway, and he's got that stable minority government. And don't rule out floor crossers. He ducked that question, Matt.
It has been some week. I really appreciate you helping us wrap it up. Rob, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Matt.
Rob Russo, Canadian correspondent for The Economist. Jamil Jivani is a newly re-elected Conservative MP. He's representing the riding of Bowmanville, Oshawa North, one of those folks headed back to Ottawa, and I spoke with him earlier this morning. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and the U.S. President Donald Trump had a call this week. They agreed to meet within the next week or less. One of the things that people might know about you is that you are very good friends with the U.S. Vice President, J.D. Vance. You went to Yale together. You spoke at his wedding, among other things. Has that relationship given you some insight into how Canada should deal with this U.S. administration?
I certainly know JD and his family well. Our relationship is mostly personal, not political. But to the extent I have any insights, my view and my message to the Canadian people is we really need to focus on becoming more independent and more self-reliant as a country. The platform that I campaigned on was focused on building what Pierre Poilievre called an economic fortress, making sure that whatever is going on south of the border has less of an effect on our communities and our families. I think that should continue to be our objective, and that's what I would encourage to Prime Minister Mark Carney. I think all of us across the country should take away, we do not want to be dependent on another country to this extent ever again. That's my hope for Canada, and I hope that's what comes next.
Can I just go back to, just that friendship? Friends talk about all sorts of things, and I just wonder whether in those conversations you have any sense as to what the United States wants. You talked about a roller coaster. Do you understand, based on any of those conversations, what's going on?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Matt. I'm not sure who understands what's going on down there. One day we're told that tariffs are going to be 25%. The next day it's 10%. One day it's the auto industry is going to be included. The next day it's going to be excluded. It has not been a coherent position. And it looks no different to me than it does to any other Canadian who's paying attention to this. So I don't know what the plans are down there. I have no idea if there is a vision for where this is going next. President Trump seems like a highly volatile, highly unpredictable person when it comes to these tariff policies. And I don't want any Canadian to think that there is more to this, that at least from my point of view, than what they can see. We're all looking at the same thing. And I think what we should all want from our country because of that is that whatever volatility is going on down south of the border, we are protected from as much as possible.
Just the last point on that. Mark Carney has said repeatedly that the U.S. wants to weaken Canada, in his words, so it can own us. Do you think that's true?
I don't know what President Trump wants. If we take his comments at face value, there's certainly a disrespect of our country when he talks about our border being this kind of invisible line and things like that. One of the things that I've talked to Americans about when I do reach out is just try to educate them more on who we are as a people. Bilingualism means something to us. As a Black Canadian, it means something to me that we had communities established in our country from the Underground Railroad because we were able to offer freedom to people before the United States was willing to. There is something special about our history, our traditions, who we are. And I'm sure many other Canadians who know Americans have tried to articulate that as best as possible. This has ignited a sense of national identity in a lot of our, citizens across the country. And I hope we hold on to that. There was a time not that long ago where it was mainstream to call our country racist. It was mainstream in Canadian media and Canadian universities, Canadian political culture, to have people trashing our country. We have now turned away from that to be more proud of who we are. And I hope we sustain that because I think that's very important.
It's interesting. In the face of this, I was speaking with your Conservative colleague, Chris d'Entremont, earlier this week on the program, and he said that the Conservatives may have no choice to work with the Liberal government on some issues. We are facing this huge threat, and that may force two parties to work together. Do you think that's possible?
I certainly hope so. I will say, Matt, I'm one of the, prior to this election, I was one of the newest members of Parliament. So I had only been in the House of Commons for less than a year before we were prorogued. What I observed was, a Liberal government that wasn't very serious about governing. And it felt like a lot of delaying and a lot of, just waiting till the next election. If they are serious about taking action, and they are serious about doing things that I think we can universally recognize as important, like building up our economy, I see no reason why we won't be able to work together. The Canadian people absolutely expect action. They expect things to get done. And I don't think any of us should be going back to Ottawa with the mentality of obstructing good things. We do, as Conservatives, have to hold the Liberal government accountable, but that does not mean getting in the way of good things being done. And we will, I hope, be able to find a balance. But we have not been back there for months. Yeah. So I am looking forward to getting back there, seeing what it's going to be like. What are the new dynamics? What's the Liberal government's agenda? And we'll go from there.
When you get back there, I mean, there has been some debate within the Conservative movement about the tone that your party should take going forward. The Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, said he hoped that there would be some soul-searching within the Conservative Party. Have a listen to this.
I think the Conservative Party of Canada was very good at pushing people away, not so good at pulling people in, and I think that they probably saw that in some of the results they had across the country.
Jamil, Jivani, what do you make of what Premier Houston had to say, that the Conservative Party needs to work at pulling people in?
Well, I do think Pierre Poilievre and the party at large did pull a lot of people in. I mean, our popular vote share was quite high. We now have elected MPs in areas where we didn't, like Brampton, Hamilton.
But there were a lot of people who didn't vote for. I mean, we heard this from people who we would talk to out across the country, including in Oshawa, saying that maybe they supported some of the policies, but they didn't like the attitude of the leader.
Well, there's certainly stuff we can learn. I don't want to pretend that we can make no adjustments or no new takeaways coming out of the election. I do think that, part of the approach, the tone, the style we had was one that was very focused on articulating the need for change in this country. And I think that is how we were able to build inroads with unions and attract a lot of young people. So there was a lot of upside to the approach that we took, but certainly we can improve. I mean, that's what you have to do coming out of an election where you don't win a majority. We have to sit there and say, okay, where can we make improvements? So I take the feedback, and certainly, when we're back in Ottawa, we'll have to consider what we do differently and how we continue to grow our coalition.
Just finally, you know that your leader does not have a seat. He lost his own seat in addition to the election loss. Do you trust Pierre Poilievre as a leader? Is he still the leader for your party in this moment, given everything that you've said about things to learn, but also where you want the party to go?
He is our leader, and he has tremendous support from our caucus. I think a lot of the new people who came to vote for Conservatives for the first time in this election have faith in him, and he will continue to be our leader when we're back in Ottawa.
All right. Jamil, Jivani, you and I spoke many, many years ago, a number of times, and it's good to have you back on the program, and I hope you'll come back again in future.
Yeah, look forward to doing it again, Matt. Thank you.
Jamil Jivani is a newly re-elected Conservative MP representing the riding of Bowmanville-Oshawa North. François-Philippe Champagne is the federal finance minister. He was re-elected as the Liberal member for Saint-Maurice-Champlain. We also spoke with him earlier this morning. Donald Trump said this week that he would be meeting with the Prime Minister within the next week or so. Aside from telling him to stop talking about taking over this country, what do you think the goal for that meeting should be?
Well, I think we need to put this discussion in perspective. First of all, we need to have respect. I think what Prime Minister Carney has been able to achieve is to have a sense of respect, mutual respect. And this was present also at the G7. Canada presides the G7. I was presiding the G7 finance minister about 2 weeks ago, and that's what Secretary Besson said as well: is to engage with countries around the world with mutual respect. I'm sure that, the Prime Minister has talked about an economic and security arrangement with the United States. I would agree with what Jamil said before, in a sense. I think this is our moment. I've done a lot of, when you look back and you've been industry minister in my case for many years and then finance minister, I feel that 2025 looks a lot like 1945 with CDAO, where we kind of need to reinvent the industrial landscape of Canada. And therefore, we'll look at things where we can do together, but at the same time, we need to diversify our industry and our markets. So we'll always have the United States as a partner, as an ally in many fields, but we need to be more independent so that we can build a stronger and more resilient economy.
If this continues, what are the other cards that Canada has?
Well, we have many, despite what the president said, and I say that with respect. Our two economies are the more integrated that you find in the world. I mean, listen, we need each other. You've seen that in the auto sector. We have the same kind of needs with respect to critical minerals. They need our natural resources. So there's a lot of things that we have on the table. And I think in negotiation, What I think the tone has changed is you go there with strength. And I think that's what we got from the Canadian public, to be able to engage with the U.S. administration with strength. And I would say also as that we're presiding the G7, so that also gives us a unique opportunity, I would say, to say, when I was presiding, I mean, we've been able to maintain the unity in the G7, but you see a lot of tensions around the tariffs. So on one end, what we've been clear to the United States is that the fiscal capacity of countries of the G7 is limited. We need to invest in defense. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in housing. But we can fight a trade war at the same time. So the United States will have to choose, whether they want to work with our G7 partner, their G7 partner, and make sure that we can tackle the real issues we have to tackle, whether it's about competitiveness, whether it's about trading between our nation, and make sure that we are more resilient. And now I would say the tariffs are preventing that in many ways. So I can assure you, if you were with me in Washington, you'd see those are quite interesting discussions that are going on now.
Do you think Donald Trump respects Canada?
Listen, his words have not shown that, for sure. It has offended Canadians, and I think Canadian workers deserve respect. Canadian industry deserve respect. Canada deserve respect. And that's one thing I think that the Prime Minister has been able to establish, is that, we will deal with each other as equals, because Canada has other opportunities. We've said first, we have many things we can do in our country to be more resilient. We can have a Canada First procurement policy at the federal level, provincial and municipal. We can build one Canadian economy. We can diversify our industries. And I've been clear with Canadians, there'll be turbulence in the short term, but I'm very confident in Canada. We're going to build a more resilient, more prosperous, and more ambitious Canada, because we have the talent. We have very strong, industrial ecosystem. We have critical minerals. We have energy. And let's be clear, we are the only G7 country with a free trade agreement, all the other G7 nations. So when I look at the fundamentals, when I'm around the table of the G7, G20, I can assure you, Matt, a lot of countries would like to be in our position of strength with respect to negotiating with the United States of America.
One of the complaints that Donald Trump has made repeatedly is that he believes the U.S. subsidizes this country's military, and that Canada is well below that NATO spending benchmark of 2% of GDP. Mark Carney promised to get to 2%. Where is the government going to find the money to do that?
We're going to grow the economy. And first of all...
You're going to grow the economy to be able to generate billions of dollars that would go to defense?
There's three things you can do, Matt. It's very simple. Either you tax, either you cut, or you grow the economy. The plan that we've proposed in the Prime Minister, if you see in the platform, is we're going to grow the economy. We're going to invest in our nation. We're going to build a nation. We're going to have that defense spending being made in Canada in a large part. And I would say when the president says subsidizing, we all know this is not true. I mean, you would have our trade balance is almost equal if you exclude oil. And that's something we have made as a point to them time and time again. And so we're going to continue to say that this is a mutually beneficial relationship. We buy more from the United States. By the way, when I'm in Washington, I always say, I hope you're happy to see me. Because, let's remember, we buy more from the United States than China, Japan, the UK, and France combined. So you're not talking about some small nation coming to the table. We are the United States of America largest customer. So therefore, we have options when we can diversify our export and our import. And that's why I say when I look at our position, when I sit at the G7 table, we are in a strong position to negotiate on the basis of mutual respect.
There's a real swagger to how you're talking about this country.
I hope. I think it's about time.
Do you think that's different? You say it's about time. And Jivani talked about this as well.
Yeah, well, he's still political. I hope the tone is going to change because people expect us to build this country. This is not about the time of political, statements and all that slogan. This is about building. This is about coming together. Canadians expect a lot from us, but they also expect people who have been going to the House of Commons to show the respect to Canadians and work with us. I've been there for a decade. So you've seen I've seen a lot of things over a decade in the House of Commons. And I hope that what I heard is going to lead to a change of tone because that's what Canadians expect. This is the time to build our country. This is the time to be ambitious. This is about a time to make sure that Canada is more resilient in the face of the biggest threat we have ever faced as a nation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
François-Philippe Champagne is the newly re-elected Liberal member for Saint-Maurice-Champlain.